Well, I'm just starting the YouTube stream, Chairman, so I'll let him in as soon as I can see him arrive.
Okay, thank you, Fiona. Let's make a start then. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this virtual meeting of the Audit Committee. My name is Councillor Peter Marriott. I'm Chairman of this committee. I'm supported tonight by officers. We've got Gail Beaton, Graham Clark, Fiona Cameron, Peter Vickers, and do you say Dale? Not on the list. Okay. I think we all know the format. I won't go into all the details. Please use the hand raise function when you wish to speak and keep on mute when you are not. And also, if any members in the meeting lose their connection temporarily, we will pause to allow them time to rejoin the meeting. And if the webcast stream fails, we'll also have to adjourn until we can reset the connection. If we move straight on to item 1 then, the minutes. Can I ask that the minutes represent a true record of the last meeting?
Agreed.
Agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Just to point out, Chairman, when Councillor Hyman does actually join, this was one of the items that he requested to speak on, so he may have some issues with the minutes.
Okay, well, we can go
Oh,
back.
he's just arriving now, Chairman.
Right, we will give him time to ask that question then. Good evening, Jerry. Are you there?
Hello. Yes. Sorry, I had great difficulty getting through.
You have a question on item 1 to do with the minutes.
Yes, indeed. At paragraph 25.5, that's AUD 25/20, on page 7. It states which is his opinion. And that is, in fact, not my opinion. That is a misunderstanding there, that these are the facts as determined by the courts as to how the law must be interpreted. So that is the nature of the law. Okay. And so I would like to have in his opinion, because that was not stated as my opinion, that's a statement of fact, Chairman. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hyman. Can I suggest you change the word opinion to view?
No, it's not a view. It's a statement of fact. Those are statements of fact. It's not a view.
No, I'd say
that is how the European courts state that the law must be interpreted. Is what I put forward. It wasn't my opinion there. It wasn't an opinion of anybody else either. It's a simple statement of fact, and I don't think a fact should be put forward as an opinion.
It's your interpretation of the law to say it's a fact. I still hold.
No. That's I'm perfectly happy to present you with the documentation from the European Courts of Justice, which explains that it is fact rather than and that it's not just a matter of it being my opinion or your opinion or anyone else's. Which, frankly, our opinions don't matter in this respect. It's a matter of law. And that's why why I wish to speak on that. To retain it as being merely my opinion would not be factual, and I did not put it forward, and as the minutes are incorrectly representing what I said, and so and that's why I'm asking you to be changed.
Yeah, I don't think I can accept that though, because
but we take that up outside of the meeting, Chairman.
If we leave the minutes as they are, you may do. Yes, I'm happy to do that. Well,
I wouldn't be happy with that because the minutes would not be truthful. But if you're happy with the minutes are not truthful, Chairman, that's your responsibility rather than mine.
Okay.
I guess.
We'll talk later. Thank you, Councillor Hyman.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Item 2 on the agenda, apologies for absence. Do we have any, Fiona?
Yes, Chairman. Apologies from Councillor Michaela Gray.
That's right. Yeah. Thank you very much. Item 3, disclosure of interests. Are there any?
None received, Chairman.
Okay. Questions by members of the public, item 4?
None received.
Okay. Question for members, item 5.
None received, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, move on to item 6, the audit action log, which is on page 9 and 10 of the agenda pack. Could we have an update on that, please?
The first item we had was...
Sorry, Chairman.
Oh, sorry. The first item on the action log was a review of the governance aspects of the property investment strategy with Graham.
So, Chairman, this was something that came out of the risk review, I believe, and members of the committee wanted to just ensure that that the governance aspects were considered by the committee, and we said that we would discuss that further at the next offline meeting on risk issues, which was last week. I think that did come up, Chairman. In terms of the actual strategy itself, the strategy normally gets reviewed every February by Value for Money Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and then agreed by Executive and Council in February. So at that point, I think if there were any governance aspects, as opposed to sort of transactional aspects, if you like, I think members can feed those in, and it may well be that next year, in the light of our financial strategy and indeed changes to the borrowing from the Public Works Loans Board that we're expecting to sort of come through from government in the next couple of months, it might be that we will need to take a changed policy up to council via scrutiny and executive. So I think that would be a good opportunity for the audit committee members to have a look at the governance aspects and see whether you're comfortable with that. And also, Chairman, I mean, we haven't had, I think we said this at the risk briefing last week, we haven't had any sort of real examples of acquisitions going through for a couple of years now as the council. We just haven't bought anything. We've or not of any materiality. There are a couple of items that the executive agreed recently. One was to re-gear a lease with an existing tenant in Farnham, and another was to acquire a pretty small building in Godalming, and that all went through. Other than that, there'd be no sort of substantial activity on behalf of the council. But I think what members wanted from a risk perspective was just to make sure that sufficient governance was applied when we do look at growing our property portfolio. So I'm not sure how you want that to go forward, Chairman, because this was first raised in March. We've, as I say, there hasn't been any activity as such, and the strategy itself hasn't been changed since March, but it will be in the next couple of months. So maybe the next meeting would be a time to sort of bring the strategy in and have a close look at a meeting, if that's what you'd like to sort of tick this concern off, Chairman.
I think that would be a good plan. Yes, I was happy with the last meeting in what we discussed and how that went through. So I think what you suggest, I think that would be a good move.
Councillor Davidson has his hand up, Chair.
Yes, Councillor Davidson.
Just a clarification in my mind, please, if I would, Graham. The governance of PIAB activities, is that, and the purchase activities, is that something the audit committee should be looking at rather than VFM? Or is this another example of an area of overlap which can potentially be confusing.
Yes, in fact, I'm not sure this is an area of overlap. I think you're absolutely right, Councillor Davison. I think the Audit Committee is concerned with the process of taking decisions on an informed basis, where options, risks, etc., are covered. And I think if members of this committee had concerns about the way decisions were brought forward and taken by the council, that's well within the remit of the the governance aspects of the committee. The Value for Money Committee, I would expect to look at any specific acquisitions from a value for money perspective, as opposed to the decision-making process. So the two are I think it's easier to distinguish between the two in this case, actually, than some of the other examples maybe that we've touched on in recent months, where it's a bit grayer.
Thank you.
Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just picking up on Councillor Davidson's comments. So we have had this discussion way back in 2018, and it has been the practice that changes in procedure, which could include governance, actually go to the Value for Money Committee. I'm very pleased that Graham has basically said that governance issues should come before the Audit Committee, which I totally endorse.
Chairman, could I just add? It's Graham again. Could I just add something that I raised last week at the risk session, which was that at Waverley, officers don't have any delegation to acquire commercial property or any form of property. Waverley set its risk appetite, where it felt comfortable, which was to have the executive being able to agree on the recommendation of the PIAB for an acquisition up to 10 million and the council thereafter. Most councils have delegations, well beyond that. And as I said on Thursday, I'm very happy with where Waverley's is. I think it's absolutely right that if we take a decision like that, providing that we can move quickly enough to secure opportunities that come up, I think it's absolutely right that elected councillors should consider those proposals as they come through, even if that means holding special meetings to meet the timescales. I think I gave the example there of a recent change in governance at Spelthorne, where I think councillors felt that they wanted to pull back a little bit on the delegation so that they had more say in property acquisitions, and that was quite sort of widely publicised. And that's fine, because it's for each council to set their own. I'm comfortable with where the members are. I think as long as that doesn't prevent us from taking opportunities, and because we do have a line in our medium-term financial plan, which is for new income each year from acquiring property, which is in proportion. It's a perfectly legitimate thing for the council to do. And the council has set the proportionality that it's prepared to go to, and it's set the parameters for those sort of investments. So I think from a governance aspect, I think those are the sorts of things that the Audit Committee might, have a view on. But clearly, a particular acquisition wouldn't come through the Audit Committee; it would go to the executive and then be, available for scrutiny if the Value for Money Committee felt that it wasn't good value. Hope that's helpful, Chairman.
Thank you, Graham. Does this imply any changes needed to the Constitution? Is that if there's a change of the way we're going to do this, the acquisitions?
Chairman, I don't think so. I think it's right. I think it works. I mean, that's clearly for members to decide rather than me. But I don't know if there's a problem that that we'd be trying to fix in doing that. I think with the delegation, with no delegation, in fact, to officers, and a fairly limited delegation to the executive, it'd be hard to see that getting pulled back even further. So I'm not sure what members would want to achieve by sort of looking at it again, but that opportunity will arise when the strategy comes up before council in February. So that's probably the opportunity to have another look.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Floyd Douglas.
Thank you, Chair. Just on that point about the executive, I'm assuming that we are, as a group of councillors members, are advised who their advisors are on these particular transactions up to sort of 10 million.
Yes, that's correct. So we do have qualified, experienced surveyors in house. We have two. And they're very good, but we would always seek the view of external advisors, legal and property, if we were looking to make an acquisition. That's what we've done before, and that's what we would do again. And I think that's a good point, Councillor Floyd Douglas. I think that would be a governance aspect, I think, for the Audit Committee to be concerned with. If you felt that decision making on property matters was going forward without the appropriate expert advice supporting that. So for me, that's a governance decision-making matter rather than a sort of a value for money matter. And I think we would seek to ensure that every time. And I think if members felt that there was inadequate external specialist advice supporting proposals coming forward for decision, then I would expect the Audit Committee to express a concern about that.
Yeah,
but we would always seek to back that up. So, okay, yeah. Thank you, Chair.
Just if I may, Chair, the other thing, Graham, is I understand that individual surveyors now have a personal liability situation with regard to advice given internally or externally. And is that picked up within the governance aspects of sort of property investment strategy? Or it probably wouldn't come in there, but under some governance related to it.
Yes, when we actually procure the services of professional services to support us in these kind of decisions, we would always check their professional indemnity insurance, and that's in the event of advice being negligent, for example, then we would seek to pursue that through their insurance. As far as our own offices are concerned, property, finance, legal, we have insurance that covers professional indemnity insurance too, for our own offices. But for something as specialist as, let's say, buying a property for £10 million, we would certainly seek to get external legal and property advice and then capitalise the cost of that as part of the acquisition.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can we move on to the next action then, which is Gail?
Yes, Chair. So the second action is share the findings of the air quality investigation with managers. This was taken to SMT on the 13th of October, and heads of service were noted the lessons learnt and would take away those lessons to make sure that they weren't repeated in any other service area.
Thank you, Gail. Can we close that action down then? In that case?
Yes, will indeed. And then the third action is not till March 2021.
Yeah.
And then the fourth one, we had the risk management informal meeting, so that can be closed off. Yes. And then the fifth one is March 2021 as well, Chairman.
Okay. Good, thank you very much. So that completes the action list for the present. Okay, let us then move on to item 7, which is the site external quality assessment on pages 11 to 28.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's Gail here. I will take this one. This is our contractors that we currently have providing our internal audit service and completing the majority of our audit plan. And this basically is for the Audit Committee to note that our internal auditors do go through an external quality assessment, which is done by an independent third party, which is the Institute of Internal Auditors. And the report that you have in front of you gives you an overview of the outcomes. But I think for the Audit Committee themselves, I think the important pages is probably page 17, which gives an indication as to the conformance with 64 of the summary of the conformances. So there's 64 of those, and there were 64 that were compliant with. And on page, on page 24, it gives a definition that the global IIA grading definitions confirms that they generally confirm. Although this doesn't seem to be, the words used doesn't seem to be very high, it is the highest level that they could have achieved. And as I say, this is just basically an opportunity for members to note that they do go through this quality assessment every 5 years.
Thank you. Well done, Gail. Can I ask the committee note this report? Noted.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Agreed.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I did have my hand up. But
sorry, Councillor Gray.
I wanted to comment on it. If we could go to page 20, on the right-hand side, it's what could stand in your way. I mean, I noticed there that they are referring to partner and client funding cuts could inhibit their services. They're also mentioning in their client data might inhibit them by doing and improving their services. I'm not actually aware that who they are saying this about. They're also giving a warning that a potential second wave of COVID could impact on their delivery. I wonder if Gail could comment on those, and perhaps also comment as to why nobody from Waverley was interviewed.
Right. Well, Southern Internal Audit Partnership are actually hosted at Hampshire County Council. Originally they were in their own internal audit services, but their internal audit service they've grown their internal audit service to provide internal audit services to other authorities just like yourself, and therefore this is where they talk about our partners again, because they see they are set up as a partnership. There are some authorities who have actually devolved the whole of their internal audit services to Southern Internal Audit Partnership. But we at Waverley, we have management decided that basically we would be using them in a similar way we used any previous contractor, but we would still have our own internal audit resource as well. Regarding the points regarding COVID, as any local authority, they would be using this assessment against any risk of trying to do anything that COVID could have an impact. And to answer your questions regarding the client data, if they were actually improving their data analytics techniques, it would obviously be dependent on the clarity and accuracy of the information that they get from their partners to enable them to fulfill that improvement of data analytics. And I think maybe I've covered all that. If I haven't, Councillor Gray, if you can just let me know if I've missed anything.
Yeah, the one thing you missed, I mean, I'd come back on one of those, which if you talk about data, they say within the body of the report that they haven't been able to advance that because their clients are not, the data is not in a way that they can basically develop that. And I wondered whether there was anything we're aware of on that. But the last point was why nobody from Waverley was interviewed.
I think maybe, well, regarding being interviewed, it's a bit like when they do a random sample as to who they're going to interview. And we're one of the newer participants to the partnership, but I can see we were part of the East Surrey Consortium, and I can see there's one or two of those who have been included because they are a partner rather than us in effect being just a user of their services. So although I get invited to their partnership meetings as an affiliate to that partnership, we aren't actually a partner in the partnership.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quite happy with the replies.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gail. Okay, can we move on to item 9 then, which is the annual governance statement, interim review.
So, Chairman, I'll take this one if you wish.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Peter Vickers. So, Chairman, in each formal audit meeting, we tend to have this on the agenda to have an opportunity for members to raise any governance concerns that they may have that may have come to light over the period since the last meeting. It's not something that you have to have agenda items to bring to the table, but it's just that opportunity to have that conversation, and that allows governance to be reviewed in a live environment as we progress through the year, rather than just waiting to do a backward review when we do the formal wrap up within the actual governance statement itself that accompanies the financial accounts. Sorry about this. I just got to answer the door. Sorry about that. My 2-year-old had something to say. Something about governance, I think. So it's just the opportunity to have that conversation in a live environment. Then you can consider things that are put on the table as to whether you feel that there are governance issues that need to be discussed. It's as much as that, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. We know that the Redmond report or the recommendation could come into legislation at some point in the future. And I know, talking to Fiona, that other councils have already made some progress in looking how to implement that. Does that come under this governance item, or should we leave that until we talk about the procedures or terms of reference for the Audit Committee?
Chairman, I think at this point it's one to note that it's come on onto the agenda. It needs to be moved along as it develops. We've already had a discussion from external auditors about the Redmond situation. So it's one to come back to, I think, in the new year at the next meeting.
Okay.
Chairman, it's Graham. Could I just add to what Peter's just said? Yeah, which is, the Redmond review is a sort of response to a consultation at the moment, and as John Roberts from Grant Thornton said at that session recently, it's until some of those things sort of filter through in regulations or statutory codes of practice, well, that it has the status of just being a response to a consultation at the moment, but potentially an indication of the direction of travel that the government may take in that particular aspect of local authority audits.
I'm going to just ask Graham, I noticed in the report it did ask for feedback from local authorities. Is that something that Waverley took part in?
Yes, it is. We responded to the consultation on that, Chairman, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I have an item that I don't want to take or go into much detail, but I would like to look at some aspects of the procedure for call-in following the Broadwater Farm call-in some weeks ago. So I'm discussing that with the portfolio holder for finance and the leader. So perhaps at the next meeting I can expand on that topic. Okay, there's a recommendation.
Chairman, Councillor Gray has his hand up.
Sorry.
Also, Councillor Hyman did register to speak on this item.
Yes, he did. Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think under this heading, I would like us to note the fact that we've got a long outstanding issue looking at the terms of reference of this committee and also the overlap. And I think if we go through the next governance report without having resolved those, then we really need to make a comment that we have got some issues, concerns about that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Well, item 10 covers the meeting of the Audit Committee in terms of the reference for the committee. We have a meeting set up. We had a meeting on the 29th, of course, as you know, which overran a little bit with Grant Thornton spending a lot of time, which is very useful on the background to the Redmond report. And I think Fiona is going to arrange a new meeting to take that forward. So perhaps we then cover some of those items in that meeting when it happens.
Yeah, sorry, I raised this in respect of the governance review. I know we've got another item on the agenda later.
Okay. Councillor Hyman, you're going to speak on this item.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. This is perhaps a matter, and it's a matter which I have broached in various arenas before, but it has to be reiterated as it's a responsibility of any member, and that is it's at a higher level, I suppose. It's the overriding constraint of governance, and the meaning of the word govern, as you know, govern was something that restricts the how an engine or a system can work so it doesn't run away with itself or cause damage. So and that is what to govern means. It's the limitation on ourselves and on the people that we represent. We are bound by the Code of Conduct, in particular the requirement for truthfulness. We are bound by the requirement in law and in our constitution of legal compliance, that we abide by the law in our decision making. And the problem, which obviously as an engineer looking at the system we have at Waverley over nearly 20 years, is that the council, and we're not alone in this, this council has no real effective system of ensuring the veracity of statements that are made by officers and members, whether it's in documentation or in the chamber or in meetings such as this. And obviously, if we don't have, in the absence of any such system that works to ensure the veracity of the information, then we simply cannot meet those fundamental obligations by which we are bound, and we do not therefore have a proper system of governance. So I know that there's a crossover between standards and audit in this and where we sit, and I know that's something which is very much on your mind, but whether this is taken forward and addressed by the committee, or both, I think it's the responsibility of both at the moment. But I would ask our members of this committee to understand that that is very fundamental to the way we operate. We cannot sit here and talk about governance if we do not have in place a system. It's hypocritical of us to do so, to even pretend that we have a system of governance if we do not have any system of ensuring the veracity of statements, information that is in front of us and that we're making our decisions upon. And so I ask that this committee assist me in helping to get some sort of simple system in place, which does not involve having to take every member of staff, every fellow councillor, every member of our own team, through the Code of Conduct system, when things are said that are simply untrue. We do have to make sure for our residents that we are, and it is our responsibility to make sure that the information is good, that we are making our decisions upon, and that has been a major problem, and as you know, it remains a major problem in government. But we have to start where we are, and we have to start with our own personal responsibility in this, and that is where we have to start. It's a very fundamental of everything that we do in terms of governance. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hyman. You make the statement about the need for accuracy. What is your solution to that problem? The problem you see?
Well, I think it has to be a very simple system, perhaps web-based, where on our council website, where we effectively have a log of questions and answers, and any question can be asked, and the answer then is put up there. That way, we don't have to keep. Once we have got to the truth, and it is on the website, we don't have to go and revisit that issue again, because I find that over many years, like myself and your better half, if I may put that, is managed to get the council to establish things in 2006, 2007, which you know, at the moment are being fiercely contested by people who don't want to accept that actually we worked out you know, where the truth lay all those years ago, and the law hasn't changed. And you know, it's very frustrating that you know, we can establish things to be true, and sometimes we can't get answers. It's a matter of, you know, we simply cannot get answers to fundamental questions like, you know, does such and such an assessment exist? And if you can't get those answers to those questions, well, if we have a simple system whereby you can ask that question, it's a matter of public record, and anybody can ask the question. Obviously, we'd have to have some sort of system as spreading them between committees and subjects and whatever, but it would need to be just a very simple searchable system, so that people could, you know, if they're thinking of asking a question of the council, if they're looking up to see what is the truth of a matter, then they can look it up by searchable terms, and find what questions have been asked and find out what's the truth, you know, where the truth has been established. And somebody would have to be responsible for that, and of course that would presumably be the monitoring officer who has the responsibility for truthfulness and lawfulness at the moment. You know, where we've had
sorry, Councillor Hyman. Sorry, after you.
That's it. No, please do. I mean, I think I don't know. I mean, that's where I would be, but I'd like other people to give their views on how would you ensure that something, you know, if I said something and you don't think it's true, right? Rather than write me an email saying you know, that I'm wrong when I'm not. You know, the courts have established that the council was that have been wrong in their approach and won that legal matter in hand for many years. You know, we need to simply be able to establish the truth so that we don't insult each other, so that we don't have misunderstandings, and that we don't make bad decisions and prejudice our residents and cost the council money unnecessarily, which is what's been going on for a long time, as a matter of fact. Thanks.
I would just query whether or not that's actually something for the Audit Committee at this point, though, Jerry. Sorry, Councillor Hyman. Because I thought our role was much more one of perhaps looking at what was intended and seeing what processes, procedures, policies, etc., actually go to meet that, as opposed to what you're suggesting, which is that we should be the forefront of that. I thought our role was much more making sure that a goal is agreed, and we're sitting there making sure that that goal is achieved in the way that is appropriate and timely or whatever. But, you know, I take your point.
You're quite right, but obviously how can the Audit Committee function unless it knows that the information it is being given is true, and unless that we can establish whether the information is absolutely true.
But you won't get that on a website for the public, though, will you? I mean, the whole point is that part of what the Audit Committee does, surely, is confirming that it is true, that we have obtained that information in the right way, that we have made the right conclusions, we have made the right whatever it is. So I suppose that I'm just playing devil's advocate, really, to you, Councillor Hyman. I fully appreciate
that, but you know, as a case in point, my issue on the minutes earlier, you know, I know for a fact, and I can provide it, and I have provided it in emails many times over the years, the evidence and the ECJ statement of what I put forward. But you know, I don't have to. You know, how many times do I have to keep proving that what I've said is correct when people are in future going to come back and deny it or deny it at the time? If people, that's the issue here. You can't govern properly. We don't have governance if we don't have any system to enable the truth to be found. Thanks.
Can we bring your comments to a close? I think the issue here is that from an Audit Committee point of view, we have to make sure that due process is covered. As far as I'm concerned, though, as I said at the previous meeting, I have some sympathy with your views. We did go through the right process. We did take external legal advice, and that is all we can ask for. Okay. Thank you very much. Now, I'm not sure, did I say at this item, the recommendation is to, well, it is to invite or to raise any potential emerging governance issues for consideration, which is what we have done. Okay, let's move on to item 9, which is to sign off the external accounts. Graham, would you take that, please?
Chairman, yes, we, and Peter might want to add, we still haven't had the revised annual audit, the audit findings letter from the Grant Thornton, Chairman. They're still working through a number of issues. The main one is around, the main one that they're struggling to get information on, as a way, is to do with pensions. It's one of the issues they mentioned at the Audit Committee. I actually had a meeting with my opposite numbers from the other Surrey authorities. They're all in the same boat, without exception. Not just on the pension issue, but with audits that are continuing well into November, and they're still in correspondence with Peter's team around a couple of the asset issues. I think what's clear is, Chairman, that the Financial Reporting Council have really ramped up their expectations on auditors, and due to a number of sort of high profile issues, and certainly John Roberts from Grant Thornton alluded to some of those when he came in, hosted a Zoom meeting with you all, virtually came in, and so the requirement has really ramped up. I honestly think that it sounds like auditors from across the different firms, and in Surrey there are 4 of the big firms who do the audits across the councils. They're all struggling to resource their audits, and because of the volume of work and the increased requirements. So I am hopeful that we will get to a point in the next week or so where we are able to get a revised plan findings report from the auditors. I spoke to Mark Bartlett on Friday. Peter and I met with the team today about sort of final evidence requirements. So hopefully we can move that forward, and it will be to your satisfaction and mine, Chairman, and we're able to resolve that under the delegation and then report back to the committee. That's where we're heading at the moment, and I've got my fingers crossed. I just want to see that findings report now so that we can move that forward. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Are you confident this will be done before the end of the month?
I'm afraid that's out of my hands, because it's Grant Thornton's report, and they're juggling a number of clients at the same time. Mark certainly gave me the indication on Friday that they are pushing for a mid-November issue of that. Clearly, we need to have a look at that and see what it says, because if there's anything in there that you or I or both of us are concerned about, then we'll need to take further action. But I am hoping that won't be the case. I think they will meet the timescale with us. Yes, I do say that, but it's not something I'm in control of, because we're waiting for them to wrap up their report. And admittedly, they are still waiting for something to come from the actuary as well, but that is across the piece, so it would seem, and that was absolutely clear from the other Section 151s across Surrey, including Surrey County today, who submitted their accounts for audit like we did very early, and are still waiting to be signed off by the auditors. So nobody in Surrey has been signed off yet, and I don't know beyond Surrey, because I haven't checked in.
Thank you, Graham. Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think 2 comments on that. I mean, obviously it's disappointing. It's not the first time we've had problems with the pension fund. We've had it in previous years. I think it's fair that Grant Thornton also audits the pension fund. Is that not right? Yep. Okay. So Graham just confirmed that with the thumbs up, which makes it a little bit more disappointing. But I think the other thing, Graham said there that he would be agreeing things with delegated authority. I'm not entirely happy with that. As Graham pointed out, there are still a few things outstanding. And I think, especially with the ability to have a Zoom meeting, I think we should have a brief audit meeting once this is finalised and come back. But that's up to you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, would you like me to come back to Councillor Gray's point? Or? Yeah, so 2 points there, Chairman, I'll come back on. yes, Grant Thornton do also audit the Surrey Pension Fund. I would just say that actually the delay seems to be with the actuary meeting the additional requests of auditors around some of the detailed points, as opposed to it's an issue with the audit of the pension fund. It's the auditors asking ramped up questions this year, and the actuary, I think, struggling to just keep up with that demand from the auditors. I mean, on the point of the delegation, I was just referring to what the committee agreed in September, and it's. I think the precise words were that, you know, a delegation to me in consultation with you, Chairman, to our we have to be satisfied basically that there's nothing, no material issues being raised by the auditors in their revised fund. I think if we're not satisfied, then we would either have a meeting or we'd enter into a further sort of discussion with the auditors. But just to reassure Councillor Gray, yeah, we're not looking to sort of slip anything under the radar here at all. It was just avoiding an unnecessary meeting if there was not much to report. That was all. Councillor Gray, are you happy with that response?
Well, I think the responsibility rests with you, Chairman, on behalf of members, and that you're the one who's going to have to decide whether you're happy for it to go through a delegation or whether you think you should be advising the Audit Committee.
Well, of course, I'm happy to do that, but if there's a strong view that we should have another meeting, then I'm happy to go along with that as well, if members wish to do that.
Chairman, could I? Sorry, Chairman. So we did this last year, and I think members at the last meeting felt that that it was appropriate to do it again. I mean, all I'd say is you do have the final say on this. I think if you're able to sort of consult informally with your fellow committee members if you wanted to in making that decision. So if the auditors come back with nothing else from their follow-up work that was outstanding at the last meeting, would you want to hold a meeting just to rubber stamp that or not? I mean, that is entirely for you and the committee. And so we don't know yet because they haven't given us that bit of paper. But at that point, I think, yeah, that's when it would be your call with, you know, alongside me.
Okay, thank you. Well, if there's no other comment on that, perhaps we should just continue as we decided at the last meeting.
Councillor Davidson has his hand up, Chair.
Sorry, I was looking at the list. Councillor Davidson.
Sorry to delay your momentum. My understanding is, correct me if I'm wrong, Graham, is that there's no actual material impact from the investigations which the auditors are taking into the pension fund. So, and there's no change to the actual accounts as such. It's just a non-material impact on our reporting. And if that's the case, I see, you know, that we've already looked at the accounts, the original draft accounts. It's a pretty immaterial decision which needs to be made in terms of agreeing the accounts when they're being finalized by our external auditors. Or perhaps I'm misunderstanding the situation, Graham.
So Chairman, yes, certainly the auditors said at the September meeting they didn't anticipate any issues arising from the pension fund, but then they were seeking sort of further assurance and some evidence supporting some of the notes. But I mean, if they've subsequently found a material misstatement in our accounts that does affect it, I would expect them to raise that and for you to be concerned and want another committee meeting to consider that. I'm not expecting that to be the case, judging by the nature of the questions they've asked the actuary and the pension fund. But until we get that final report from them, I can't say for certain because they haven't concluded that piece of work. But certainly they were speaking positively about not expecting anything that would affect our bottom line coming from their inquiries of the pension fund. It was more just about some sort of routine checking on some of the numbers, and that's what they struggle to get some answers back, because they have asked a lot of different questions this year, and our team and the pension funds team get into a pattern of responding to certain questions, and because the Financial Reporting Council have ramped up their asset and their pension fund requirements of the auditors, I think they've had to. Well, we've had to, and the pension fund have had to respond in a different way. And of course, the actuaries are in business. They're being inundated with additional questions, and they're wanting to charge for that. And so there's that sort of tussle as well. They're busy people, and now they're getting lots and lots of clients like us suddenly asking them for analysis for their auditors, and they're saying, well, hold on a sec, we can't just sort of turn that round without charging you, and in no time at all. So I think that's where some of the issues have arisen. It's just been new requirements driven by the Financial Reporting Council through the auditors, and but there we go. It's for Grant Thornton to sort of plan all these things through, and then and try and get that information.
If there is actually no resultant change to our bottom line, then I think I'd be very happy for you, Graham, together with our chairman, to sign off the accounts. If there is an impact, I agree with Councillor Gray. It should come back to us so that we can all review what the impact is at a full committee meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Davison. I just hope we get the report from Grant Thornton soon enough, and hope there aren't any major changes or any significant changes that they've highlighted. Okay, thank you very much. Let's close that item. Next item, where are we now? Item 12. Review of the progress in achieving the audit plan, pages 41 to 58.
You've missed the meeting for the terms of reference, Chair.
So we have. Sorry, I'm on two steps down, haven't I? Yes, the terms of reference meeting. Now, Fiona was going to arrange a date for another meeting that we follow on from the meeting we had on the 29th of October, which we didn't complete our intended discussion. Do you have a date, Fiona, for that meeting?
Thank you, Chairman. Potentially the Thursday, the 26th of November. That looked as though it was free. I just need to double check in diaries again. But that looks as though it would potentially work in the morning at about 10 o'clock. And then we can hopefully conclude, or at least move the discussion forward a little bit.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else that anybody wishes to say on that item? I mean, I think the Redmond report will come into that meeting as well. But essentially, the meeting we had on the 29th with Grant Thornton really talked about where we got up to, how the Redmond report came about. So we didn't really address much in the way of the terms of reference for our committee. Any other comment on this item?
Yes, Chair, if I may, what is our intent in terms of getting, I mean, we're going to have a discussion about them hopefully on the 26th of the month. What is the end date for us in terms of actually getting any amendments to terms of reference done, agreed and sorted? Is that by the end of the year?
Is there a deadline date, Fiona, for this?
Sorry. There's no deadline. Obviously, any change would need to go to full council.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would be aiming for probably February council, just in terms of sort of how things have gone. I expected us to have got a little bit further at the meeting on the 29th, and then perhaps something could have been brought back formally to this committee and on to December council. But the sort of discussion presentation on the Redmond report, and the discussion went on a bit longer than I think probably all of us were expecting. So this has been going on for quite a long time, and if only from the point of view of sort of finishing the piece of work, I would like to resolve it and not keep talking about trying to resolve it. And I'm sure the members of the committee would also like to get it sorted and move on to something else. So I'm not wanting to drag it out any longer than sort of absolutely necessary by it.
So that means that we've got to have it ready for distribution towards the middle of January, which means we need to have done our bit by the end of the year, the latest, isn't it?
Yes, really. Yes, if we can have that meeting and get some clear steers and something that we can bring forward to a committee meeting in January, then that would be sort of a good target to aim for, I think.
Great. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Gray, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just think that we shouldn't try to push this too fast for the sake of timetable. I do think that taking Councillor Floyd Douglas's comments that if we want to make changes like to put an independent person onto the audit committee, then we should have that lined up for the February meeting. But if we're still resolving some of the responsibilities, the issues, I don't see that there's an artificial deadline of February. But the things that we can agree on, we should push through. We don't have to do it in one go. That would be my view.
Yeah, if I may come back, Chair, I absolutely agree, Councillor Gray, but I just think I share some of Councillor Hyman's impatience where this has been going on for years, and it would like to get something closed off, even if there were addendums that then had to be approved or we wanted to add, to just get a sense and to get residents get a sense actually that we've got a terms of reference that's up and running and albeit dynamic.
Okay, so what we're really saying, by the end of that meeting on the 26th, we should be in a good position to at least write a first report, even if that does mean addendums have to be added later on.
That's
Councillor Gray again, do your hand still up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I brought it down now, but I agree with your summary.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on then to item 11, which is review the progress in the implementation of the internal audit agreed actions. So, okay,
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'll talk through this one. This is the, as you've just explained, the report regarding internal audit actions, and included in this report are those actions that have not yet been implemented within the agreed date. And members will note that these are the recommendations that came to the previous audit committee. So there is no additional actions at this point that have not been implemented within the lead time, the time previously agreed. And the committee did indicate that they would wish the head of service to come along to include justification as to why those recommendations haven't yet been implemented, and provide some background as to when they would feel that they could possibly address those actions. And I think we have Zach in attendance.
Yes. Hi, Zach, would you like to comment on these actions?
Yeah, absolutely, Chairman. Firstly, I'd like to apologise for not having provided a written update in advance of this meeting. I do now have an update on all of the actions, and hopefully some of this is good news. Some of it is stuff that we need to work on in terms of revised dates. So we'll be requesting revised dates in terms of 2 of the actions as set out on page 39 of your report. The good news really is that the community infrastructure levy, which was IA 2014. That's complete. That was completed in July with an update to the SIL guidance, because the audit action was to update the SIL guidance to reflect latest guidance from central government. That's been completed and is uploaded to the council's website. It was beyond the target date, I apologise, but it was done in July 2021, so that's now become a completed action on the system. The other good news is that Louise has very kindly, the policy manager has very kindly talked me through the Pentana system for updates. So for going forward, I'll be able to provide regular updates, and apologies that hasn't taken place to now. The other two outstanding actions relate to the planning enforcement plan, which is listed as IA 20008. And there are various actions in that. Well, there are two sub-actions in that. One being to update the enforcement plan itself. On that, we've made some progress. I've had internal meetings with Victoria Chillarton and Beth Howland-Smith to discuss taking this forward, and we've got another meeting arranged for next week. We've also agreed with a tentative timeline with Fiona Cameron in Democratic Services for bringing this forward in terms of the forward plan for sign-off, and what we're aiming for, and what the request would be aiming for getting final sign-off for the new enforcement plan by the 31st of March next year. Unfortunately, this was one of those things that did take a bit of a back seat with all the other pressures of taking forward local plan, internal consultations, and I'm not going to use COVID as an excuse, but it certainly has hit our ability to take forward certain things in the department. But we're confident that the updated enforcement plan will be complete by March. The other action in that, in terms of IA 2008, was the target response times and having those in the new database system, so that they could be automatically monitored, and rather than us having to do a sort of a manual check of that could be monitored and reported more regularly and more clearly. The delay with that is partly to do with the delay that what I'll be coming on to in terms of the planning fee income report, which is around the rollout of our Project Horizon database, which is an end-to-end system. So from receipt from the planning portal through to decision notice issuing, we've been rolling out a new computer system for that purpose, to replace some rather clunky internal IT systems, and to avoid double or even triple handling, which happens at the moment and has an impact on our validation process and our ability to meet government deadlines and targets. So what we've so we're rolling out this new system in conjunction with a company called StatMap. When I first joined back in December, the intention was that this would be all rolled out during the summer or early autumn, but we have experienced a number of delays in taking this forward. However, I'm pleased to say we've gone through now the testing phase. So we've put a lot of resource in with StatMap to doing the testing of a beta system, and the next phase is starting in a couple of weeks' time, and will be our training phase, where we roll this out to all of the technical and administrative staff and all of the planning officers. That's due to end in January. So we're hoping for a go live date in February. But just in terms of managing expectations and a little word of caution, I suppose the date I would be expecting that to be in place would be the end of February, so the 28th of February 2021. We're working very closely with business transformation on that. So that's the enforcement, the planning enforcement side of things. Those dates will be updated in Pentana, subject to your agreement, albeit I I'm not able to change those dates in Pantana myself. I don't have the necessary authorizations. The planning fee. Sorry,
can I just ask you
sorry, Chairman.
on those
Yep.
two items there? You've got two risk items, one in the first target response times box, and then one for the enforcement plan.
Yep.
First one, you've got performance issues may not be identified. What does that really mean? And similarly for the next one down, where you say key policy documents may be out of date and not reflect current operations. Does that mean you don't actually, you already know that the policy documents are out of date?
The enforcement plan is long overdue in terms of updating. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not suggesting there will be massive changes in our approach, but it is overdue in terms of needing a refresh. The reference to the dates is more about how we record our performance against target response time, and the intention is to have those into the New Horizon programme that's replacing this sort of ILAP system. And you would be able to get automatic updates and data from that about performance against our enforcement target times. So it's meant to be driving performance of the enforcement team, in that if we're not meeting our targets, it's a tool for being able to pick that up. The risk at the moment, without that being updated in terms of the system, is that our systems are rather clunky and not easy to navigate. We are recording times, but it's a more of a manual process, whereas this will be able to have like the Project Horizon system would be able to interrogate it straight away and know where we are with in terms of our performance, in terms of response times on the various priorities. So we've got a major priority 1, priority 2 is for medium cases, and priority 3 is for low importance cases. So the priority 1 majors will be things like protected trees, listed buildings, that sort of thing, where there would be irreversible damage. Priority 3 might be someone's erected a fence that might be slightly too high. So it is more about being able to monitor that. It's not about completely changing the way we provide enforcement. But in terms of the planning enforcement plan, I think that we've started that, as I say, but we do need to do some proper benchmarking with other authorities around A, their target times, and B, whether there's sort of best practice that we can learn from in terms of updating the enforcement plan. And then, as I say, that would go through the usual council process. It would go through an overview and scrutiny committee, and then on to an executive. Whether or not it would need to go to full council, I don't know. I'd have to defer to democratic services, but certainly that's the intention. And as I say, the intention would be that we would have final sign-off from the highest governance body. I presume that would be the executive by the end of March 2021.
Okay, thank you.
So did you want me to come on to the other one, which is the planning fee income report? You'll see there are quite a lot of sub actions in this. When you actually interrogate them, a vast majority of them are again linked to our rolling out of the effective rolling out of the Project Horizon system. So I have updated the figures in terms of where we are and sort of suggested that we're about 80% complete in terms of Project Horizon, but there are other things such as the procedure notes that need to go along with those, and obviously we can't finalise the procedure notes until the system's finalised, so that has a knock-on effect on a number of these. But in terms of the overall position we're at with the planning fee income, it's currently showing 57%, but that would be very rapidly go up to the 100% once we're into the sort of final phase of rollout. Which, as I say, would be January, February next year. And I'm very confident from discussions with David Allen and with StatMap and my internal colleagues in development management that 28th of February, I'm being a little bit conservative there because hopefully it'll be before then, hopefully it'll be January, but I want to, I just want to allow for some, I suppose, contingency just in case we face any issues with either training or final rollout. although the testing has identified numerous issues that we've managed to have addressed. So I am confident that if the Audit Committee are willing to sort of indulge me and allow for an extension to the 28th of February, I'm confident that in March, when we can report that it was completed on time.
Thank you, Zach. Do committee members have any comment to make on this? Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, Zach, our concern is that there was an awful lot of things down to you without necessarily Gail coming to this meeting with an update. I don't know whether it's because you don't consider audit things important or not, but we take it very seriously, especially when dates come and go. I noticed that you have a number that were from a meeting in June. And I would have thought that you need to be a bit more careful committing to dates. It wasn't prior to the pandemic, so this was after the effect of it. And if it was dependent on a new system, then you should have that. And if you're going to fail on these dates, then you need to come back and tell us sooner and explain, like now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Councillor Seaborn.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'll wholeheartedly endorse Councillor Gray's comments. It's disappointing to have imprecise info in our papers, and so Zach's given us a useful update, but actually that should have been in the papers so that we could have actually given it some thought rather than having to digest rather a lot of information and then make decisions on the hoof. Totally agree about the inappropriate dates as well. We've got 9 red flag items here. That's quite a lot of risky material to be in one paper, and the dates for sorting these out don't appear to have been the appropriate dates at the time of the closeout meeting. So that's something that needs to be fixed. I guess my biggest concern, though, is that, question to Zach, do you actually have the resource in your team to be solving all of this stuff? Because, your name's down for all of this, but you're clearly, you're not going to be the person doing all of it. Is the resource in place? Because that's the kind of thing we should be worrying about as an audit committee. So, serious issues identified, lack of progress against what we've been told initially, and we need to make a judgment as to whether there's a line of sight to a solution, and it's your team that's got to deliver it, not just you. So can you give us some insight on that, please?
Yeah, sure. Chairman, did you want to bring Councillor Davison in first, or did you want me to respond to those?
It might be useful just to respond directly to Councillor Seaborn.
Okay. Firstly, just to pick up on the point that Councillor Gray made, no, of course, I don't think that audit is not important. That's not the case at all. I do, however, accept that the dates that were put down in terms of the rollout of the Project Horizon, so the planning income, with hindsight, were unrealistic. These were the dates I was being told that we're on target for rolling out this system in autumn, as I say, and so they seemed reasonable at the time. But now we're into November, and I'm being told that we still won't get them until February. So I think that's a lesson learned there in terms of when I'm faced with further audits and actually coming up with something that's a lot more that is much more realistic in terms of managing expectations. But and I do take the point that it would be a lot more helpful to have the information up front in writing. And as I say, I can only apologise. Now I'm in a position where I know how to use the system, and I'm able to do that. The more concerning point that was just made from members' perspective was around resourcing. I can assure you that for the Project Horizon, we have deliberately not backfilled, but we've brought in some agency staff to cover off planning officer time so that the officers were able to do the testing phase, and we'll be doing the training phases. Similarly with consultants, agency staff in terms of, the validation side of things. But I've been in close contact with Graham Clark as my director, and obviously as the Section 151 officer, ensuring that we get that assurance from the officers that these targets will be certainly be met. In terms of the planning enforcement, so I'm confident, as I say, that we will meet the February time for Project Horizon. In terms of the planning enforcement, yes, I mean, although it's down to me, it will be very much led by our enforcement manager and by development manager Beth Howland-Smith and Victoria Chilarton, with my oversight. And I'm confident that they've got the resources to do that. I mean, actually, the time that I'm talking about to March is not 4 months to write the thing. It's more to meet the timetable for going through the various governance process, exec briefing, ONS, and executive, and that's why I'm giving you a cautious date there. But no, I fully accept all of the points that members have made, and I can only apologise once again.
Thank you, Zach. We have Councillor Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. These points have been brought.
Chair, I'm sorry, can we please have a point of order here? I've had my hand up now and 4 people have come in front of me because no one is making a list of speakers. Sorry, Councillor Cole, do continue, but it's very frustrating.
Do you not have a facility to put your hand up, Councillor? I mean, not electronically, not honestly. Okay. Okay, I'll carry on. These points have been brought up under audit, but they seem matters of quite important strategy and systems. Were they just noted? Were they not known by planning before they were picked up by audit, or has audit picked up things that were languishing in planning and had previously been agreed as strategic targets?
I think the point I'd make is that the Project Horizon system has, and maybe Graham can help me here, has been on the books for some time. It certainly started long before I joined the authority. We have been given a number of dates from our partner organisation. They have slipped, regrettably, but it's not anything to do with strategy. It's about the actual rollout. They're developing a brand new bespoke system for the planning service. It's not that they're taking one off the shelf and just implementing it. They're creating a brand new one to meet our requirements, and it has taken longer than we had anticipated. So I don't think it's a strategic problem. Yes, the dates. Perhaps I was naive when I signed up to the dates in the fee income report back in June, which Councillor Gray pointed out, and yes, I'm not claiming any COVID impact in that regard, but I think that's as I say, I'm not making excuses, but I'm partly reliant on the information I'm given from the team who are working on taking this forward, and from StatMap, and we have. I think it's fair, without criticising StatMap too much, we have been let down on a couple of dates as we've gone through the process. But I am assured that we're there or thereabouts. I had some very encouraging meetings recently regarding rollout. And as I say, the testing phase is now all but done. We're entering into the training phase, which will take 6 to 8 weeks. Which means that after Christmas, we're in a position to do the final checks and rollout and balances and do the rollout, as I say, before the end of February next year with a go live. And that will incorporate the points that are made here about linking through to financial systems, etc., about automatic logging of fee payments and who they're from, so that when there are refunds due, etc. So there are a number of sub points in the Pentana system. There are a couple of things that are not as advanced, and those are the procedure notes, but those will need to be, as I say, finalised when the system goes live.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor, where are we now? Yes, Councillor
Douglas, I hope. Thank you, Chair.
Apologies for not seeing your hand raised before. Tommy,
That's fine.
do Do you have the hand raise function on the participant?
Yes, I've had it. Only lasts for 5 seconds, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
But I have had my hand up showing my tattoos. There we go. Zach, thank you for what you've said today. There's 2 questions I have. Well, actually one, but in 2 bits. Is the only concern I have really is any of the red risk areas, are they likely to get worse, deteriorate because of the delay? And if so, in what manner? I mean, that's the only thing that concerns me. There are delays. It's not acceptable. We've been through that. But really, the nub of it for me is, is there a negative impact, and what is the extent of that, and what will it look like between now and, let's say, March?
Okay, so the areas that are probably most risky relate to refunds and making sure that they tie up between the systems. I don't think there's a risk that we won't be doing the payments correctly, but one of the issues in terms of getting the systems to talk to each other is ensuring that our XCOM system talks to the new Project Horizon. So I can't say there's no risk, because whilst we don't have that link, we will be in the same position we've been in for the last however many years, but without this system. But the light is at the end of the tunnel in terms of this. They did pick up in the audit a couple of instances where they couldn't reconcile payments to between the systems, and that was certainly not an acceptable situation. I think that, I suppose the only point I could make about that, and I can sit here and make promises, but until we've got the system in place, the new system in place, it's very difficult to know how that would be dealt with. So I think it's a risk that, regrettably, we probably have to live with for the next 3 months or so. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But it's a very valid point. Yeah.
Thank you, Zach. Councillor Davison.
Thank you, Chairman. I hope I'm not going off on too much of a tangent. I do get worried when we have major system changes, both on the impact of what it means to the previous controls and what's happening with the probable new controls which need to be put into place, and the procedures to manage the new systems. The other aspect, of course, is I also feel a bit concerned when I hear about system delays. And it's not, I know it's not our remit, but possibly, Chairman, we could ask the VFM to look at what is the post-implementation review of the system changes that we've been putting into place, and have we actually got the value for money out of them that we had expected? Because these are cost reduction exercises which are supposed to be helping us to manage ourselves out of the current fiscal hole. But going back to the audit remit, the governance side, I'm wondering whether we should think about triggering activities next year, once these systems are being put into place, to review what their procedures are, and whether we have still maintained the level of controls that we needed to have before the, at least matching what we had before the changes were implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Is that an implied action you raised? Is that something you wish to take forward?
I think so. I think there are 2 actions there. If the rest of the committee and yourself agrees to it, which is to ask the VFM to look at how that project has gone, and have we actually achieved what we wanted to achieve within the timescales we had planned to do so. Because that's a VFM type activity. And I think the other aspect is the action would be, do we feel that we need to have a review of the controls and the procedures around the new systems which we've just implemented?
Okay.
And maybe I'm asking too much, and I'd welcome comments back from our finance colleagues, and indeed from Gail.
Okay, maybe you can ask that question then.
Chairman, do you want me to start? It's Graham. I did put my hand up. I'll take that. Oh, I'll just take that down, actually. So Chairman, just sort of wrapping up a couple of the comments, actually, made really good comments from members on this, because whilst we're talking about planning now, we could be talking about any of the systems and any of the risks, because I think the focus of the Audit Committee does need to be on on the risk. I think Councillor Floyd Douglas made a really good point around delay to implementation, and where does that expose us to greater risk or not? And in some cases it might, in some cases it might not. I think so Gail and I talk a lot about the audit plan, and a number of sort of events would trigger us to focus on a particular area. As Councillor Davidson just said, when we implement a new system, we always ask Gail and her team to do a post-implementation controls review, particularly when there's a financial aspect to it. But in any event, it's not just about the money; it's also about fraud and error and use of resource as well that we're looking to sort of lock down. In fact, one of the reviews we're talking about now is the planning income review was triggered by a concern. It wasn't in the audit plan as a routine systems audit. It was actually triggered by a review because planning income was declining, and yet the case numbers seem to be fairly steady. So I asked Gail to start a review because just to make sure that there wasn't any sort of misaccounting for planning income. And actually the review, whilst there are quite a few recommendations on here, what you can't see here is the actual report itself. The report itself, if I remember rightly, and Gail will correct me if I'm wrong, concluded a reasonable level of assurance overall. But they quite rightly, the auditors quite rightly picked up on a few points around procedures and process and reconciliation that could be tightened. But overall, we'd be having a very different conversation now if they'd found that we had lost, any money along the way, and they did lots of transaction tests. So, these are really important procedural points, but they're not looking to plug, an income losing gap that the auditors identified. So we absolutely will be doing a post-implementation review on the system. And I'd want Gail to be involved as we get into the new year with Zach's system team to sort of design in controls rather than try and sort of bolt them on afterwards. So that's what we would normally try and do, and that's why it's an advantage to have Gail as an employee as well as the contractor. I think that sort of combination has worked for us before. So hopefully that gives some comfort to some of the questions asked about, whether we've got some strategic issues here. So as I say, that some of the audits are routine. We put them in the plan every year because there's a sort of a high risk area, and we treat it as sort of internal consultancy, if you like. It's not a response to a particular issue, but we also look out for things that have changed, whether that's a new system, a new interface, a new sort of banking arrangement, and then we'd always get Gail to get an audit done of that to make sure we come out the other side with at least as strong a control framework as we had before we went in, preferably stronger. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Graham. Councillor Davidson, does that answer your question? Does it?
It gives me a considerable degree of reassurance, and it's good to see that internal audit are actively engaged with the project team as they're doing their implementation to ensure that, as Graham pointed out, that the procedures and controls around the new system are as good, if not better, than the previous system, which is replacing. Again, it may not be something to which the rest of the committee may wish to support, but I do feel that somewhere along the line, we need to check whether we are getting value for money out of what is quite a considerable investment in both costs as well as resources, human resources, and in the system changes which we've been implementing over the last many months. Well, I'm on the BFM, according to Redmond, an inappropriate overlap. But something which possibly I could raise there with at our next meeting, which is next week.
Thank you. Gail, is this something we could have, could I suggest a report at the next meeting?
A report on
the value for money aspect from your perspective. Is this something you could make a comment on?
I'm not sure I'd have it done by the next audit committee, but it's something I can look into, and maybe I can have a discussion with you, Chairman, as to the avenues that you're most concerned about.
Perhaps we can have it just as a place marker in your action list.
Right.
And Chairman, I think as Councillor Davidson said, who's also a member of the ONS, I mean the ONS committees have forward work programmes, so it might be that you want to flag that one for forward programme. And there's quite a lot of story around that. I mean, I won't sort of get into that detail now around the planning system. That is, we took an opportunity there to develop a system rather than buy another big clunky legacy system. So the costs and human effort are different from going out and just buying and procuring one, and you end up with a replacement for what you've got. We set out knowing some risk and accepting that to chase down a much better solution at a better cost. And that decision was taken probably a good year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, actually. That's when we embarked on this, because building control was the start. Anyway, I'm sure you don't want to go into all of that detail at this meeting, Chairman, but I think if the Value for Money ONS wanted to do a review of that, well, all of that would come out as the sort of the background, if you like, and then we could examine the success or otherwise of the project so far.
Thank you, Graham. Okay, Zach has got his hand up.
Yes, Chairman. Sorry, just very briefly, just to provide Councillor Davidson and the rest of the committee some further reassurance. We will still be running our current systems until such time as we know for sure that the new Horizon system is working and has as few glitches as possible. So in terms of ensuring that sort of smooth transition, there will be a time where we're still using the old system whilst certain things are running on the new system, and there will be a good transition in that regard, so we don't just switch off and then realise we haven't got a system. So I just wanted to provide that reassurance to members. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Councillor Hyman, I know you're registered to speak on this item.
Yes, Chairman. Sorry, Councillor Hyman. Councillor Hyman hasn't actually registered this item, but obviously it is your discretion if you're happy for him to speak.
Okay, well, I'll take that back then.
Sorry, are we on item 12? I thought I had.
This is item 11, Councillor Hyman.
In that case, all I'll say is that that I endorse. That I endorse entirely what Councillor Gray and Seaborn have said, and I wouldn't wish to distract from that at all. So yes, please, back to you, Chairman.
Thank you. No other speakers on this item. Can I therefore ask the committee to note the content of the internal audit progress report? Noted.
Noted.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, a point of order. I thought we should be giving or agreeing a deferment of date on this. Is that not correct? Or are we just leaving it open?
Well, I guess, yes, that's probably formally the correct thing to do. Okay, so perhaps can I propose, therefore, that we are happy with the proposed revision of the dates presented by Zach for completion of those items?
Well, we need to have those dates, I think, Chairman.
Say again, sorry?
I think we need to have those dates.
The dates that are listed in the report, you mean?
Yeah, unless we're just taking as blanket the end of February.
Yeah.
Can I just clarify? Sorry. So what I said was 28th of February, 2021 for the planning fee income report. This is IA 2017 and the sub actions, and then for the planning enforcement actions, the 2 sub actions there, I was asking for requesting the 31st of March 2021 to enable me to go through the governance process.
Thank you, Zach. So do we agree on those dates?
Agree.
Agree.
Okay. Thank you, committee. Thank you, Chairman. Would you excuse me now?
Thank you, Zach.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, so that's the agreed action there. Move on therefore to item 13, the fraud investigation summary.
12, Chairman.
No, review the progress in achieving the audit plan.
Yes, Chairman.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Gail, are you leading this one?
Yes, I am, Chairman. Thank you very much. This is the an overview of the current position of the internal audit plan, and for ease, I have included in paragraph 4 of the introduction to the report the reviews that have currently been removed from the plan, and those reviews that have been added to the plan. And as you can see, there have been 35 days removed from the plan and 52 days added to the plan. In the annex, Annex 1, that provides information as to the percentage, at page 49, the percentage of the audit plan and as to how that's progressing. And as you can see, there isn't as much completed as I would have envisaged at this point in time, but there is a lot of reviews that are work in progress. And even now that there's a few weeks since I completed this report, that reviews that have not yet commenced, the audit outlines for these reviews are now in progress of being agreed for those reviews to be commencing in the latter part of Q3 and moving into Q4. The one point in page 51, you will see there the 2 reviews that have been completed and issued as final reports. And if I can just say sorry, I've just lost my page. If I can just say there is an error there regarding the BACS report. Unfortunately, I've put the date that the report was issued is in 2021. Please accept my apologies. Obviously, that should be 2020. And further down, you will actually see that the positions that has been, the position of the reviews, that for each of the reviews, you will see the ticks that shows the progress that is being made for each of the reviews that are in the plan. And what I can say is I was trying to get down to the bottom area where we do have the showing again those reviews that have been added and those reviews that have been taken out. And then on paragraph 8, the update on the budget, which I think it was Councillor Seaborn that had proposed that I include that each month to give the Audit Committee an overview as to what the budget is for audit services. I'm not sure whether MD has any comments they wish to make on the plan.
Any comments from members?
We have Councillor Seaborn and Councillor Floyd Douglas.
Yeah.
And also Councillor Hyman has registered.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. I'll be very quick on this. Since I asked for things to be done and they've been done, I'd just like to commend Gail for what a fine, clear report this is. The only point I picked up was the one point that she pointed out to us, 2021 instead of 20. Beyond that, it was all very straightforward to understand, and I think it tells a good story of good management of the internal audit process under very difficult circumstances. So well done, Gail. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose my question was also, well, first of all, congratulations, Gail. It's made it very easy, simple reading. And I like the deliberate error that you put in there for us, which some of us caught and some of us didn't. Just the budget expenditure to date thing is very interesting. And I just wondered what we're going to do with that information now that we're capturing it. Is it purely for information, or do we want to compare it to in the future to how effective we are? Is it a cost per head? I mean, how are we intending to use that data?
Well, it is actually just information only for the Audit Committee, for the committee to be aware as to how much the service of internal audit is costing the authority. Because again, there can be other authorities. With other authorities, we used to do a benchmarking exercise with regarding not just salaries, but the number of days we use, etc. But we did actually find as Waverley, because we're actually one of the, and particularly within Surrey, we're one of the very few that actually have our own housing stock. So therefore it's very difficult to actually compare with others, because obviously a lot of our internal audit resource is focused on our biggest expenditure area, which unfortunately is housing, because it's very expensive to maintain our housing stock.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hyman, you wish to speak.
Yes, Chairman, my apologies. I was a little confused as to whether to address this under the last item or this when I indicated, and indeed I was confused what item I was on, and I'm rather heartened that you, Chairman, were also equally confused. So, but we are, and what I wanted to cover on this in terms of the internal reviews that are internal audit reviews that have been done. I think this is good news in a way. Members will probably remember that 2 or 3 meetings ago there was an item listed there which was the review of the project management of Brightwells and Memorial Hall. So in a way what Councillor Davidson said about asking for project reviews chimes with this. We were told at the time that yes, we could have that by request. They're not public documents, but we could have that confidentially by request. And I did chase it up in the summer, and Gail, thankfully, Gail did send me through a review, but it wasn't for the Brightwells and Memorial Hall. It was for Way Court area in Godalming, but I was told that's what we had, and so I was a little bit unhappy with that. I was going to raise that, but thankfully this afternoon, after I'd indicated, Gail had sent me through something which I think we've locked someone in a loft at Waverley throughout the summers, because they've managed to dig out a couple of reports which are in respect of the project management of Brightwells and the Memorial Hall. They have very, very limited remits, and I was going to be asking that that you perhaps the committee consider escalating these matters to bring them forward, because they're things that have to be done. But from what I've read of them quickly this afternoon, I want to take a proper look at them myself before I say more. And they are confidential, so I can't talk to you about them anyway, not in public in this meeting. So it is something that I'll take up by email with you and other committee members, obviously in confidence. So as I'm not asking if we are going to have a review on that, I'm thinking from what we've heard actually that I should be asking that the committee seriously consider that we do have a review of the impacts of COVID and remote working, particularly on audit and governance and the operation of the council, because to me, it does seem, I know everything that I do takes twice as long now. And so I appreciate how difficult it is. And I see how difficult it is to chair meetings. Everything is more difficult, it seems, when we can't have people around sat next to us to advise, and we can't just grab the information, whatever. But I think perhaps we should be looking at some sort of review of COVID and remote working, particularly, the level of resources, because we have got a lot of staff and everybody sat at home You know, and there are a lot of distractions when people are at home. And if we need to change how we're doing things in order to make sure things are done properly and that we keep to our responsibilities, you know, we do need to have some sort of check on how things are being done, who's doing what, where the responsibilities lie, so that we don't get the sorts of issues which were under the last item, which are concerning, particularly, you know, in your position, in this committee's position. So perhaps you'd like to think about that and ask other members what they think, or are we just making things worse by asking for a review of how difficult things are? I don't know, but I think we need it, because this is going to certainly continue for another 6 months, which, although today's good news from Pfizer, I think, which probably everyone's aware of, it's only a 90% guarantee, and it's not a guarantee in Britain either. But you know, we've got to put up with this for another 6 months, and I do think we need to be careful and make sure we're doing things properly. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hyman.
Councillor Floyd Douglas has her hand up, Chair.
Yes, Councillor Floyd Douglas.
I'll be very quick. It's very interesting that what Councillor Hyman says, because one of the questions I had was really more related also to sort of the mental health impact on how people are performing and how much attention to detail is going on in terms of procedures and the policy, etc., etc. Again, I don't know if this is one for audit, but it would certainly, if I was running a business as I used to, it would certainly be an element around governance that would concern me, that mistakes were being made more frequently or in different ways. And also that people are under pressure, and we know often with people what happens when they're under pressure, they don't perform as well.
Thank you. Well, I suppose in some ways we have no choice. In the current situation, there is not an alternative business model we can adopt, is there? But I take your point, Councillor Floyd Douglas. Is there any plan, can I ask Graham, in terms of the staffing situation and where you might think there are lessons learned, let's say, or issues that should be brought to the attention of people if this were to carry on for any length of time?
Chairman, yes, and as you say, we don't have an alternative at the moment. We're following government advice. We're keeping people safe, staff and councillors, and members of the public as well, from you know, avoiding as much as we possibly can close contact with people, and until you know, until the country is, you know, in a better place and the government have relaxed that advice, that is how we'll need to continue to operate. I have to say, I think we should look back as an organisation on the year and be quite pleased with the amount of our business we've managed to undertake remotely, particularly councillors in the democratic function. I think it's you know, to run planning committees, to run full council meetings, to do those sorts of things remotely. Not ideal. I don't suppose any of us would you know, would choose that over sitting in a room and getting that sort of human interaction. But I think it's been a real achievement for everybody involved. As part of the, we call it the RCT programme, the Recovery, Change and Transformation, that the Value for Money Overview and Scrutiny Committee keep oversight of. There is a work stream there about agile working and also about our staff and our people. And in fact, we only had a board meeting this morning, and that is about, that's a limited time project until such time as the council is able to sort of return to its usual mode of operation. You know, that they're projects to keep an eye on corporate performance during these times, and also picking up Councillor Floyd Douglas's point about the welfare of our staff. We've done a couple of staff surveys this year, and we're very aware that people are struggling. They're struggling to perform, to communicate effectively in some areas, and particularly those that have got other fellow sort of home workers at home, you know, just struggling for space, internet bandwidth, some sort of practical things as well. You know, we're trying to address that, but without encouraging people to do anything that puts them at risk. I think the biggest impact that we're hearing from staff, and we're noticing as well, is that lack of social interaction and that in-person communication can affect people's performance. And that sort of visible leadership, those team meetings, those discussions at the desk, particularly actually in Zach's team in planning, where they do a lot of bouncing things off of one another. You put a plan out on the table and a colleague will come over and you talk it through, and a counsellor will walk in and you take them through it. Those sorts of things, over a prolonged period of many months, can really start to be noticed by customers, by counsellors, etc. So, yes, we're doing what we can. We're trying to keep an eye on our staff and the performance of our staff, and making some allowances where we can. And but actually, the staff have risen to the challenge and have found pretty innovative ways around some of these things, and serve our customers actually. And not many customers have been to the office for many months now. We still have by appointment some of the high profile, high dependency customers for homelessness and other things coming in. Other than that, most people have found ways around it through our sort of increased online offer. So a whole bundle of things in there, Chairman. I think, again, the ONS are keeping an oversight of that programme until such time as the programme concludes, which will be when we're able to sort of return back to some form of normality. But that will look different because, I'm sure, like most organisations, we will sort of land after all of this in a different place from where we took off, which will be with more flexible working, increased use of technology, smaller office, more flexible, agile working, etc. And that we've got plans in place for all of that, and actually that suits our financial base as well, because that will have lower overheads to it. Chairman, quite a big explanation, but it is a huge issue, and I think it's a really good one for the committee to think about and then perhaps review at the next meeting, particularly picking up on Councillor Hyman's point about the effect that has on decision-making governance, not just of this committee, but across the board as well, and whether there are any tweaks we need to make to that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Graham. Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just again, picking up on the last couple of points, and one, I think the council's to be commended for operating an EAP programme for its staff and also for councillors, EAP being Employee Assistance Programme, so that people have got someone to refer to if they want. It would be interesting to note how much use of that is being operated, not who's using it. It's at an activity level, so actually to give us some confidence that it is actually being useful. I think the other point I wanted to make was one of the projects that was added to the programme, which is 20 days to look at the positions of sole responsibility, and I think this came out of the original air quality issues going back some 2-3 years. It's a bit of a concern it's taken this long to basically look at this, and I would ask that we do prioritise that so that we can see if we've got any weaknesses, especially as a result of the change in working patterns. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. No more comments then. In that case, I think I'm back on the right path of the agenda. Can the committee take note of the content of the internal audit progress report? Noted. Thank you.
Noted.
Moving on to item 13, the fraud investigation summary. Gail again.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Yes, this is the members might think that this looks very familiar to them, this report, particularly the annex. As you will see, there's not been any movement regarding the financial element within this report or indicative savings or financial value. But what has changed is obviously the number of cases that I've been dealing with. And because obviously I did provide it to the committee quarter one, this is now including quarter two. What I can say is since the end of Q2, there has been a bit more activity regarding changes, and I will be reporting that to the committee in the March committee, because obviously that's the next time we now meet. Will be very early. I think it's the 1st of March, I think, is the meeting. But as I say, this is just given you as members an overview of the current position as it is at the end of Q2.
Thank you, Gil. So there's no specific issues to point out at the moment then?
No, not really. As I say, the actual financial value was the same as the previous quarter, but obviously the throughput of cases, those numbers have changed.
Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Chairman. Gaskar, did you see any sort of systematic changes during the lockdown period or the period of the COVID-19 emergency? I mean, there were changes noted elsewhere in criminal activity. I wonder whether you'd seen anything in the things that you've been looking at.
Well, the things that are reported here doesn't include any of the work that was done regarding the COVID grants that Waverley were distributing on behalf of the government. But what we were doing for those, the team were working very closely with third parties, government agencies as well, to raise any issues where we had identified before providing any grant that seemed to be dubious, and actually sharing that on the by electronic means throughout a group called NAFIN, which is one of the groups we're a member of, this was making other local authorities aware that we have stopped a particular applicant getting a grant because the background information did not substantiate the circumstances that they were pertaining to be in. So that in effect, there was quite a lot of work done by the team, which I wasn't part of, but my fraud investigation officer worked with Peter's team in finance, who were doing the verification and validation of these grants before we were obviously issuing the grants out, ensuring that those that were provided with the grant were due to have those grants and fulfilled the criteria that had been set by government. With regarding the housing tenancy fraud issues, because my fraud investigation officer was working and assisting on the COVID side, and obviously due to COVID, there wasn't the home visits couldn't be done, because obviously we had to make sure we were safeguarding our members of staff as much as obviously ensuring we are safeguarding members of the public, and therefore there wasn't, or we haven't found there has been an increase in the housing tenancy fraud. But as I say, I know there has been over the countrywide, there has been agencies notifying us of possible areas that we need to be aware of, and we have acted upon them when we have received those.
Okay, that's clear. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Gail. Any other comments? So in that case, can I ask the committee to note the success of the fraud investigation activity?
Noted.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item 14, then the Audit Committee Recurrent Annual Work Programme, pages 65 66. Gail, could you go through this?
This is your the committee's. Oh, sorry, I've just lost my page. This is the committee's standard report of a schedule, and I don't think there was anything that needed to be changed on this, because obviously this is going now from March onwards next year. Again, obviously in March you will have the new internal audit plan for 21-22 to approve, and I think maybe the other thing, it may depend on whether the Financial Reporting Council changes any of the times, scheduled times that maybe external audit will be having to report by. So I think at this point, unless anyone else has any changes that they think that needs to be made, or they're aware that changes that need to be made aware of, I'm not aware of any myself.
Do members have any comments? No. Okay, could I ask then that the committee note the recurrent annual work programme.
Noted.
Noted.
Thank you very much. I understand there are no issues to be considered in exempt, is that correct?
None that I'm aware of, Chairman.
Thank you, Kim. In that case, I think that completes our meeting. So I declare this meeting closed.
Perfect timing, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Right.
Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good night.
Goodbye.